Hello, everyone, and welcome to another week of Fast Track Training. I'm very excited to have our four-time number one producer in all of FFL with us today, Steve Giordano. He's also actually an executive vice president. And so he's going to be speaking to us today about how to really treat this as a business as opposed to just a hobby, and what you need to do starting out as a brand new agent to make sure that you can actually succeed and not just burn out halfway through. So thank you so much for being with us today, Steve.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. How are you doing today?
I'm awesome.
Okay, so let's get right into it. So you issued about $21,000 your first month.
Yes.
So I would say you are more than qualified to talk about what goes into actually hitting that, not just the fact that you're a number one producer every single year since I can remember. So what would you say are those main criteria when you're really, talking to that brand new agent that's looking to hit 20K initially?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I think about with new agents is you are an insurance. You can either be an insurance agent or you can be a business and structure yourself as a business and then sell insurance through your business. And what I mean by that is any business that's out there, you have to understand and believe that you're going to have investment, and here it's leads, obviously. You're going to have an investment that you have to set up for yourself that needs to be on repeat week in and week out for you to continue to keep your business growing. So when you're new and you're starting out, one thing that I did was, and I didn't know a ton, like I started an LLC through, I live in Florida, which cost me minimal, and then eventually turned that into an S Corp. And then the first thing I did was I got a business credit card. Now, you don't have to have the greatest credit in America, and there's plenty of credit repair things that are out there now that can actually fix your credit pretty quick. But what I thought was, okay, I can either take the little bit of cash that I have over here to start my business and buy leads, or if with my decent credit, I think I got like a $20,000 credit card through my LLC. And my thought process was, okay, if now I can in the first month utilize that business credit and spend $1,000 a week on leads and know that no matter what, I'm spending it on the credit card. I don't have to physically divvy out the money yet. And then I can go to work and I can struggle and go through all the things I'm going to go through as a new agent. And then, all right, I'm able to write 21, take out the 9-month advance, how much actual cash I was able to get paid. And then I paid myself a salary and I made it, what I needed to live. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't like, hey, I wrote 20 grand, let me go buy a new car. I started paying myself a salary because that also kept money in the business account where I was then able to, if I had a chargeback or something, they weren't physically yanking the money out of my business account. I had the money there. I could continue to write out of it, but I was able to do that because it was every week the lead spend was the lead spend. It wasn't going to change. I wasn't going to be out of business in week 2 because I had that credit behind me. And then I don't like to spend interest on credit cards, nor should anybody. When the bill came, because you're getting the advance of money, you're able to pay the bill in full every month. And here's a little cheat code. You find a credit card that's going to give you rewards. Now you're spending a decent amount of money on that credit card. You're getting rewards every week on top of it. It almost was paying for a half a week of the leads as time went on. So to me, I know we're not talking the actual selling of the insurance yet, but from structuring the business as a new person, to me, that's what you need to do to create the cash flow, because this is a cash flow machine. But it's only a cash flow machine if you structure it correctly.
That makes a lot of sense. So I think that belief is something that comes up a lot when we're talking to a new agent, and especially if an agent is coming in and they're looking to make money, the thought of spending money on leads can be terrifying.
Totally.
So what would you say to an agent that says, I've never done sales before, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to make one sale. How can I foresee myself setting up, $4,000 a month in leads?
Yeah, for sure. The first thing that I started working on was I started following entrepreneurs and understanding that their thought process around money was very different than mine. Because and most people that come into this are like that. Some people come in, they've been in sales or been in business before. But most people come in, if it's corporate America, if it's they just had 9-to-5 jobs, the way they view money is, I made, let's use 100 grand as an example. I made 100 grand, and now you're going to tell me I'm going to spend half of what I used to make in leads to now, let's say, potentially 3, 5, or 10x's, right? Depending on how good you are. The thought process up here is the first thing that has to change. And for me, in starting to listen to entrepreneurs, and there's so many ways you can do it now. I was always on YouTube, I'm always on Instagram, and I'm just following people that are entrepreneurs and spending money to make money, right? So that thought process is the first thing that has to change, because if it doesn't change, you will be running a business or trying to be an entrepreneur with a mindset of a 9-to-5 employee, and you're dead in the water if you do that. So that was like the first thing for me. If you're new, you have to start looking at money differently, and the fear around it, you have to put the fear over here. If you work hard enough and you structure correctly, like, I'm not saying nobody's guaranteed anything. It's sales and it's entrepreneurship, but you're giving yourself a pretty good shot. But if you go into everything, I'm going to be fearful, this isn't going to work, it's not going to work. Like, I look back at when I wrote, that first month, and the second month I think I did like 34. When I look back on it, I had a lot of blind faith. I didn't know what I didn't know. And as I look back, I'm like, I'm kind of glad I didn't, because I had nothing else to fall back on. I had to be successful. Now, that didn't always look pretty. It wasn't always easy. It was a lot of hard work. What I would preface new agents in the first 9 months, you better hustle, because you have to get through the first 9 months, get paid, obviously, the advance, and then get yourself to back-end money. Back-end money, life's a little bit easier, because now stuff's been on the books. Now you're getting, hey, here's $100, here's $100, here's $100 on the 10, 11, and 12 months, and then into the second year on renewal, stuff like that. You got to really hustle that first 9 months. But the fear and everything around money, if you have the fear and it cripples you, don't do this, in my opinion. Like, because you're dead in the water. You got to really overcome it.
Okay. And you mentioned that you have to really hustle, and I think everyone tells himself, yeah, that's me. I can definitely do that, because I've had a 9-to-5 job before, so that's me. What does that actually look like to you? What does that schedule of someone who's actually willing to hustle in this opportunity look like?
I've always loved the traditional FFL schedule, and to the fact that I've never really changed it. Like forever it was when I started, we dial Monday, Thursday. We run appointments, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and now obviously with the virtual and, there's a lot of different things that can work. When I talk to new agents on my team, I'm trying to figure out, because obviously people have kids and lives and different things. How do we structure your schedule? If it looks like that, great, but how do we structure your schedule? And if you tell me what you need to make, I'm going to kind of give you an idea of what I think it's going to take and the amount of time you need to work, the amount of leads you need to have, the amount of dial time you need to have, if it's virtual appointments, in-home appointments. So when I'm running that traditional schedule, one, I'm working full-time, right? And to me, it was working 6 days. And again, if I'm going to a new agent, like, do you want to guarantee your success? Run 4 days and dial 2. I get it. It's 6 days. But we're not, like, laying roofs here. You know what I mean? Like, you're in, like, for me, if I'm dialing 2 days, I'm in, like, my house or my office. Like, I can dial for 6 hours. I can book my appointments. I can then put the phone down and go hang out with my kids. It can be the same thing for you. But the problem is a lot of new agents, their dial time is not 6 or 8 hours straight dialing. It's, I dialed 20, I went and I made a sandwich, and I took an hour off and went back. And they don't actually work it like a real job. Like, I'm fanatical. 8 o'clock comes around, like, the phone's ringing to somebody. And if you're new, that's the kind of the way you have to look at it. My job is I'm dialing from this time to this time, we're running appointments. Mm-hmm. And if I worked in corporate America, if I worked at McDonald's, if my start time was 8 o'clock and I needed to make the fries at 8 o'clock, I need to make the fries at 8 o'clock. You have to think of it the same exact way from a work perspective. So it's like you're thinking in these two ways. You're thinking the entrepreneurship way of, like, the money and the spending, but then when it actually comes to the work, you can work the way you were working in the sense of, like, having the grind mentality and the time that you got to put into it. But a schedule has to be adhered to, because if it's not, you turn into the agent that, like, they dial when they want, then they go run appointments when they want, and then they have terrible results. Mm. They'll sell a couple of things, and then the next week they sell nothing, and then they're just inconsistent, and then they're not actually making the money and utilizing this opportunity to what it's really meant to be.
Mm, that makes sense. I think a lot of times I hear agents talk about why they got into the industry, or with FFL specifically, and they talk about, the time flexibility. I can make my own hours.
I hate hearing that.
Yeah, what do you think the
Worst.
reality is of if you have a 9 to 5 job, you're tired of working 40 hours and you want to work here for the flexibility, for the work-life balance?
Yes.
Can you bust that myth, basically?
I love that you said that. And here's the reality. If you want to do whatever you want to do, you can do it, right? And what I mean by that is every month there are different things in my schedule that I'll do with my wife, my kids, my family, sporting events. Every month I have different things. They're on different days of the week, and I'm able to do them. But when I do them, one, I'm not saying like, hey, I'm going to go to 75 sporting events this week and not work. I'm saying, all right, cool. Saturday night, we're going to go, take the kids to see the Easter Bunny and go to dinner. But on Monday, I'm doing this. Tuesday, I'm working here. Wednesday, I'm doing this. Thursday. The rest of the week, I'm working. I'm just building in, okay, this is the thing that I'm doing for my family for that week. I went to a spring training baseball game with my son a couple weeks ago. It was on a Tuesday. Great. So I can do that. It's my business. I can do that. But guess what? I worked longer on Wednesday. I ran a couple appointments Monday. I did stuff on Saturday, whatever it was. I did a couple things on Sunday. I think the bottom line is do what you want to do with your flexibility, but understand every week if you need to run, let's say it's 40 hours of, appointment time or whatever you want to call it. The 40 hours of appointment time needs to be the same every week, irregardless of what you're doing in your schedule and your flexibility. The problem is people look at it and they're like, I'm my own boss. I can go in at 9:30 this morning. You can, but I went in at 8 and I'm going to sell your client. And now you're not going to make any money. So it's the way you look at it. Do the things you want, but structure them correctly and schedule them out, I'd say, for the month.
Awesome. Now, I have a lot of agents always asking me if this is something that they can do part-time, realistically. How would you answer that?
I think you can. I think you have to have the right expectation. And again, it goes back to when I talk to somebody new and I talk about their schedule. I also then tell them, is it going to be harder per se? Yes, because it's going to be harder for you to get the consistent flow of like when you do this and you're dialing and it's over and over, it's repetitive. And then you run appointment, it's the same and it's repetitive. One, you get good at it quicker, right? Just by, osmosis, like you're doing the repetitive motion. When you're part-time, that can be a little harder because you're not doing that. Can you be successful? Yes. But again, you also have to figure out what that success looks like for you. If you want to issue 10 for the month, cool. We got to figure out what the schedule will be. And what I would say is no matter what you do, you have to have something consistent per week. If that means you can dial 10 hours and run appointments for 10 hours, and that's 20, okay, cool. So you dialed on Thursday. When I was part-time, I would dial Thursday, after my job, when I first was part-time for 2 months. And then I would try to run appointments. I'd be dialing Thursday and Friday night after work to try and build up a full Saturday. And if ideally I wanted to book 8 appointments on Saturday, I think the first and second month I might have did $10,000 each, something like that. Mm-hmm. And again, I wasn't very good. So there was that factor, right? Because I'm learning. But I put in the time, and I remember at the time I was saying to myself, I don't know if I'm just really not that good at this at all, because it seems like if I'm sacrificing a Thursday night and a Friday night to dial, and then I'm sacrificing a full Saturday, is that beneficial? And then I'm well, I issued 10 off of 4 days of work, technically. I mean, obviously the dial time. And then you're of course, you're getting better as time goes on. But I did that every week. And I remember, I think it was the first 3 weeks I didn't sell anything. And then all of a sudden it started clicking a little bit better for me. But I ran that same thing. So if you're part-time, that's the answer. You can't be hey, I'm going to work this week and then take this week off and then maybe work the next and then, whatever. Because you do have to obviously understand we have chargebacks and you have to outright it. And it obviously also can be harder if you're part-time and you're kind of winging it. You have to have some form of a schedule part-time.
Okay. You mentioned something about in the beginning you were wondering if this was actually for you and whether or not you were just really bad at it. And I don't think I ever hear agents quit because they're so good at it. It's usually because they think they're horrible at selling life insurance. And I think that self-awareness is also a component that not everybody is great at. So if you're that brand new agent and you're trying this brand new, how do you determine if this is really for you? If you're in that period of time where it just sucks and you have to get through it, or if there is something that's not clicking and you need to seriously consider other options.
Yeah. I think if you can give it all that you have, number one, and you can be honest with yourself and you can say, okay, I gave it everything I had. I set up my business right. I set up my lead flow right. I set up my schedule right. I'm listening to enough trainings. I'm talking to enough people. If you can honestly say you're doing all of those things and then it's not working, quit. But here's the reality. Most people in all those check boxes that I just marked off, they're not doing multiple of those things, and that's why they're failing. Like, most people. Some people, it isn't for them. Sales, is everybody the greatest salesperson? Do you need to be the greatest salesperson to be successful here? No, because we have leads. You just have to have enough and work it right that you can walk into enough people that have a check on their forehead and they're ready to buy. And if you're nice and you seem like you know what you're doing, they'll buy from you. But usually people, they're not successful because there's something there that they're just not doing. Like, hey, I'm doing everything, but I'm not listening to any training. Well, why? Like, there's so much training. I mean, if you can't learn how to do sales, if you can't learn how to do anything in today's day and age, the way, information and media is available to you, you got to look in the mirror. Why am I not putting in time to listen? I'll never forget before I was getting going, I watched so many of the early call to closes and the things Sean did. I would literally come home from my full-time job and my wife would be like, all right, like, we're watching Sean Mike tonight. I'm like, yeah, because I need to learn how to do this. And I think that is a lost art. And some people, though, some people train too much and they don't put in enough activity. I was like doing that early. And then when I was running appointments while I'm in the car, I'm just listening to stuff. And I'm like doing it and listening to get better, doing it, listening to get better. And then next thing you know, you kind of have an explosion from it. I think new people need to lean on stuff like that.
Okay. Going back to profitability, aside from making sure that you have your month planned out in regards to what you have to put into your lead spend, from a brand new agent's perspective, what are some other aspects that they should be focused on to make sure that they're profitable, but also not being paralyzed by overanalyzing their numbers and, going out into the field? What do you think that happy balance is?
Yeah, it's a good question. Profitability is not necessarily hard to have, but a lot of people aren't profitable. And the reason is because they're not utilizing the credit, first of all. I think that's number one. Because it's like, how millionaires make millions? They use other people's money, they invest it, and then they make money off of it, and then they pay the money back. Mm-hmm. So I'd say that part of it's number one. And then I think a lot of people, they spend too much on the monies they make, and they're like, oh, my God, I got these deposits. This is great, and it's advanced money and what have you. They don't spend and allocate monies correctly, and they don't kind of go through the tax setup correctly either, meaning like they might not have a good tax person or what have you, and they're not like allocating monies for taxes, and they're not utilizing things for write-offs correctly because obviously we run a business, so there's a lot of write-offs. So I think there's a lot of things there, and I think early on, like, if you make 20 grand in the first month, let's say you write 20 grand, what have you, like, maybe like eat ramen noodles a little bit longer. You know what I mean? Like, you were eating ramen noodles before, eat them a little bit longer, start building this thing up, start paying yourself a reasonable salary, and then as the months go on, like I always tell this story, I had student loan debt when I started, like 40 grand. And I could have paid it off month 2, but I decided to not pay it off until year 3 because I was like, okay, this is what I pay in the interest. It was minimal. This is what I can now do with the monies that I'm, making to kind of grow my business and different things we did there. I'm like, that's a better allocation of my money. And I think that's a thought process people have to have. If you start making money now, don't go buy like Versace tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, start utilizing the money correctly and build that up. Make sure you're profitable. And then, okay, now I'll get something nice for myself.
Okay.
But people do it too soon. They go to Disney World way too soon.
Yeah. On the topic of profitability, what we see here at corporate is the persistency and quality of business being something that really kills a lot of new agents early on. I think I've sold a policy, that's all that matters, and then that's it.
Yep.
So client retention, how important is that? And when you're that brand new agent, what does that look like in regards to what they should be doing so that, again, they're not spending too much time talking to carriers every day, but they're making sure that their business is actually sticking?
Yeah, that's a good point. One thing I would say is understand the industry average, right? If the industry average is 20 to 30%, anything that you write in your equation of how you're managing your money for your month of the credit card money you're spending and what you're depositing and what you're paying yourself, all that stuff, in your brain say, okay, I have X amount in my bank account. I'm going to have 20 to 30% that I'm going to lose, not from my bank account, but just that I'm going to lose of what I've been advanced, right? And then, yes, you're focusing on how do I do little things to be better for better client retention. So maybe if it was 30 the first month and I wasn't that good at it, I can get it down to 20. If it's cards sent out to clients, if it's sending them text messages with, like I started like a digital business card and I sent like a referral link and just different little things to try and send to have, retention, little things obviously you do in the home to build credibility for yourself, telling them to call you on anything, telling them to call you if they need to ever lower anything, if it feels, unaffordable, little things in retention. But then if you're that new agent, you have to think about that and factor it into your numbers. And what that does is not only do you factor it into your numbers, you factor it into your work ethic. If I sell something, yes, you can say, oh, this is amazing. I sold a $500 a month IUL. But here's the way you should look at it. My mentality is, great, let me see where it is in a year. Like, I'll get excited in a year. I'm not excited today. They signed up for today. They could not want to do it tomorrow. Let me focus on what's next and the work. And that's where the scheduling and the consistency comes from, because it's like, yeah, you could go out on the weekend and write $80,000. Does that mean you shouldn't work Tuesday, Wednesday? No, you should, because you could have wrote nothing and you still would have worked Tuesday, Wednesday, and you would have hustled even harder. So like when I strive to have good weekends, because it's kind of our start of our week, and when I have good weekends, I'm like, great, I'm going to work hard at the back end because I know the game. Like I know, I don't want to say you can't count on things, but like in your head, act like you can't count on things. Mm-hmm. Act like 100% of people cancel. And if you work like that, you'll never have a problem.
Awesome. Last question is about consistency. So I think my personal opinion is that I think that's the biggest issue that agents have. And I think when they see you being the number one producer over and over, it's because you have some magical wand that you go out there and you mesmerize your clients, and they don't think about what you do day in and day out. We also notice a lot of agents who maybe they're making the most amount of money they've ever made here, and that happens month 2, and now we don't hear from them because they're in Bora Bora for the next 6 months. So how do you, one, overcome the highs of the crazy income potential that you have here, and then bring yourself down to a level to continue to do those same boring actions day in and day out for so long?
All I heard was magical wand and Bora Bora, and I got excited. Can I have both of those? I'd like a magical wand.
You can have whatever you want.
Right? Yeah, it's interesting. I think people try to make this in sales like, and you see a lot on social media, like it's this magical thing, right? And then what happens is a lot of people get very cocky around, I had a 30K month and I'm so amazing and this is the greatest, and I'm always going to have 30K months, right? Like, you're not. You can if you think about the little things that you did the month that you had it. So when new agents, and I get this a lot, you get that guy or girl, they hit something big, they hit Hall of Fame 1 year or a month or whatever, and then they're like, man, like the next year or next month, I just couldn't get it back. And the first thing they do is they kind of have like a victim mentality, right? And they act like the clients changed, the leads changed. I'm like, no, you changed because you got in your head, you got cocky, you acted like it was going to just come to you. And you always have to, and I try to do this a lot, you got to think back to the first month. You got to think back to the first appointments. Act that way, like, and then it comes down to the scheduling and like it's boring, right? Like, be really boring. Like, I'm a high producer because I'm really boring. Like, I'm not doing anything crazy. I'm just doing things the same because I know the formula. Because when you start doing this and you do it, like if I go back to those first couple months, I'm like, okay, you did this activity and you weren't that good to write 21, and then you did more activity and you were a little better to write 34, and then the lead flow and different things and your psychology, whatever things you're learning. If you're new and you're having those struggles of the ups and downs, go back to the things that you did, the fundamental things. It's like sports. Sports teams will struggle, and it's like, well, you stopped doing a fundamental drill in practice every week because you thought you were so great because you won a couple games. Like, go back to your fundamentals. If you can't hit a baseball and baseball players go into slumps, they're doing something different, and then they go back to what they were doing when they were successful. Wow, look at that. They're going to start finding success again. It's the same thing with this. And it gets to be boring and mundane a lot of times, but like boring and mundane doing insurance makes you a lot of money. Like, you don't have to be like, rocket ships and, confetti. Like, you just be cool and be consistent in your grind and your activity and your conversations with people. And look at your phone. If you can see your call log from that morning, you're not working hard enough. Like, you should have so many phone calls, because that's how we make money, right? We contact with clients, contact with agents. That's how we literally make money. You have to look yourself in the mirror and say, I don't have enough contacts. And how many contacts did I have when I wrote 30? Oh, I didn't have as many when I wrote 15. And that's kind of my thing with new agents and the struggles.
Okay, awesome. I think that covers about everything. I hope that the takeaway that you guys got from that is that Steve is a normal human being. He is not any more special than you. And so if you are doubting yourself, it probably is because you're doing something wrong, which should be a happy thing. That means that you are capable of overcoming that. It's in your control. You just have to change your habits and build discipline that he's been talking about. I mean, a lot of what you've said to me, it just sounds like you're just very disciplined in everything that you do, from how you think about the business to then how your actions align with that. So I hope that was helpful for you, and we look forward to seeing all the types of different goals and milestones that you guys are able to achieve within this program. Thanks for watching.
All right, today we're going to talk about a new program we have at Family First Life.